You're sitting around a fire with 30 people. Someone says the herd moved north. Someone else says the water source to the east is drying up. A third person thinks you should stay put for another week. Everyone has an opinion. Nobody is in charge. So who decides? This is one of the strangest things about ancient human life. For roughly 300,000 years, humans lived in groups with no kings, no chiefs, no elected officials, no managers. No one owned the land. No one controlled the food supply.
Let's start with what we know. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies, the Hadza in Tanzania, the Juhawatsi in Botswana, the Batek in Malaysia, have found something that surprises almost everyone who hears it. These groups are aggressively, almost obsessively, equal, built so that no single person can accumulate power over others. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying this. He called it a reverse dominance hierarchy. In most animal groups, the strongest individual rises to the top and controls the rest. In human hunter-gatherer groups, the opposite happens. The group actively prevents anyone from dominating. Anyone who tries to take control gets mocked, ignored, or removed. And this wasn't accidental. It was a system, a deliberate, enforced, socially maintained system. Here's how it worked in practice. When a decision needed to be made, where to move camp, whether to follow a herd, how to handle a dispute, the group talked. Everyone talked. Not in a formal meeting with raised hands and minutes taken, just around the fire, casually, over hours, sometimes over days.
Anthropologist Polly Wiesner documented this among the Juhawatsi. Decisions that modern organizations would settle in a boardroom took place through what looked like ordinary conversation. Someone would mention a problem. Others would respond. More people would add their perspective. Slowly, without anyone calling a vote, a consensus would form. Not everyone had to agree, but everyone had to be heard. And here's the critical part. The person who spoke the most wasn't the leader. The person who spoke the loudest wasn't the leader. The person whose idea eventually became the group's decision wasn't celebrated as the decision maker. The process was invisible by design. Because the moment decision-making becomes visible, it becomes power. And power attracts people who want it for the wrong reasons. So what about the people who were clearly more capable? The best tracker, the most experienced elder, the hunter who never missed. Did they have more influence?
Yes, but not authority. There's a difference. Influence means people listen to you because your track record earns it. Authority means people obey you because of your position. Ancient human groups had the first and structurally prevented the second. The Hadza have a word for someone who acts like they're better than everyone else. Roughly translated, it means one who talks big. It's one of the worst things you can call someone. Being called that leads to immediate social consequences. Your ideas get ignored. People stop sharing food with you. In extreme cases, you get excluded from the group entirely.
This sounds harsh, but consider the alternative. In a group of 30 people with no legal system, no police, and no prisons, a single person who accumulates too much power is an existential threat to everyone else. The checks on dominance weren't cruelty, they were survival. But what about actual conflict? Two people want opposite things. The group is split. No one is budging. What then? This is where something fascinating happens. Hunter-gatherer groups had specific mechanisms for breaking deadlock that had nothing to do with voting or authority. The first was mobility. If the group genuinely couldn't agree, they split. Not dramatically, not as a punishment, just practically. One group went north, one group went east. They might reunite in a month, they might not. The option to leave was always available, which meant no one was ever truly trapped in a decision they couldn't accept.
Anthropologist James Woodburn called this immediate return living. You have no fixed assets, no stored wealth, no permanent structures tying you to a place. That mobility is a form of power.
It means you can always vote with your feet. The second mechanism was humor. Serious conflict in small groups is dangerous. Unresolved tension builds. Violence becomes possible. Ancient humans developed a remarkably effective tool for diffusing it. They made fun of the conflict. They made fun of the people involved. Not cruelly, but persistently, until the situation became impossible to take seriously. Boehm documented this repeatedly. Someone getting too aggressive, too insistent, too dominant. The group would start laughing at them, mimicking them, turning the conflict into a joke.
It's very hard to maintain a power grab when everyone around you is giggling. The third mechanism was the elder system. Not leaders, elders. There's a distinction. Elders weren't obeyed, they were consulted. Their value was memory. In a world without writing, the person who remembered the drought from 40 years ago, who remembered which route the group took when the river flooded, who remembered the outcome of a similar conflict 3 generations back, that person was invaluable. Not because they commanded, because they knew things no one else knew. Knowledge was the only currency that translated into genuine social weight. So let's put this all together and reconstruct a real decision.
It's late summer. The group has been camped near a riverbed for 6 weeks. Food is getting harder to find within a half-day's walk. 2 people have separately noticed animal tracks heading southwest toward higher ground. One elder remembers that 30 years ago, the group followed those same highlands in a dry season and found good hunting. Nobody calls a meeting, but over 3 days around the fire, the topic comes up. Someone mentions the tracks. Someone else asks about water sources to the southwest. The elder tells the story from 30 years ago. A few people push back. The journey is long. There are children who are tired. That gets heard. The timeline shifts. Maybe they wait 4 more days. Someone suggests scouting ahead first. 2 people volunteer. They leave the next morning.
When they come back with a report, the decision has essentially already been made by the conversation that happened while they were gone. No vote, no leader, no moment where someone stood up and said, "We're doing this." Just accumulated agreement, shaped by evidence, memory, and the understanding that the group's survival depended on getting it right. Here's the part that's genuinely hard to sit with. This system worked. It worked for 290,000 years, longer than any government in human history, longer than any empire, any democracy, any corporation. The system that eventually replaced it, hierarchy, authority, appointed leaders, is only about 10,000 years old.
And we've spent most of those 10,000 years dealing with the consequences. Bad leaders, corrupt systems, power concentrated in the hands of people who wanted it precisely because they were the ones who shouldn't have it. The entire history of human governance is basically a very long attempt to solve the problem that hunter-gatherers solved by just laughing at anyone who tried to be in charge. They didn't need a leader because they built a system where everyone was the leader and no one was allowed to act like it. We called that primitive. They would probably call it obvious.